Good evening, and welcome to The Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy, broadcasting to you from Region 5 of the United Police State of Amnesia. Today is April 20th, 2017, and I've got a pretty interesting show for you tonight, I think. It's all about Europe, what's going on in Europe. I'm going to try to stay on that topic as much as I can. And I have a clip mostly about Nigel Farage, about 15 minutes long, to give you some good little clips. He's a very entertaining guy to listen to, and his boldness in the European Union is amazing. He's always very clear, makes things very simple, has a great sense of humor. And for those of you who don't know who Nigel Farage is, he's an Englishman. He's what they call an MEP. He works as a representative of the United Kingdom at the European Union. And he meets in Brussels. And he's also the leader, or was the leader, of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, which was instrumental in bringing about the Brexit vote, which will take the United Kingdom out of the European Union. Now, right from the start, Nigel Farage, who was in a very lucrative financial position before he ran and got the office at the European Union, even before he started working at the European Union, his goal was to get the United Kingdom out of the European Union. And he makes it quite clear to his colleagues at the European Union that he is there essentially to destroy the European Union. Or he wants to not do it personally, but he feels that he is a representative of the people of Europe and their need for independence, personal sovereignty, national independence, national sovereignty, because he feels that that is the natural order of things, and that the European Union is essentially an unnatural entity which must be dissolved because it does not serve the needs of the people of Europe or of the world for that matter. And I think if you look at his career and you look at what he says, he has really made a good point. And he is part of a global movement which is all about returning the idea of nationalism, national sovereignty, to the mindset of the people of the world. Remember, for decades now, the idea of a one world government where everyone joins hands and sings Kumbaya, and there's peace on earth, and it's all run by, well, who? You know, most people don't think that far. Who's actually going to run the world? What group of men will make the decisions that affect the entire globe? Well, it turns out there's a small group of men who've been wanting that particular job for well over 100 years. And if you really take the long view, the historical long view, this has been the ambition, the aim, the goal of powerful men as long as history has been recorded. You see, there have been people who've been wanting to take over the world. Just look at Alexander the Great. He's the first one that I know of in history who tried to take over the world. And then just look through history, up through the ages, right up to the present time. And one man or a small group of people have created empires, and they've always come and gone. Well, this is nothing new, in other words, is what I'm telling you. And people throughout the world have fought against tyranny, global tyranny, but forever, virtually forever. Personal independence is, and freedom is essential for human welfare. Only people themselves know what's best for them. Small groups, family groups, tribal groups, nations. So the idea of the nation state is on the rise again. And this is countering decades or hundreds of years of propaganda. And 2 world wars, remember, don't forget that. 2 world wars that were engineered by the very same people who want to bring about this global government. No one has ever quite figured out why World War I happened. Well, we know why World War II happened. World War II happened mostly because World War I happened. What happened was the World War I, the world fought and fought until it completely exhausted itself, killed off a whole generation of young men at that time, then went into a period of abeyance while a whole new generation of young men was raised up, and then they fought again. And the whole idea was that the media, controlled by this small group of men, would paint the picture or create the narrative that it was countries fighting each other that caused World War I and World War II. And all the other wars that had happened before then, that it was countries. They didn't take the responsibility for what they had done, because really what starts wars is leadership, not countries. A country is made up of all the people who live in that country, all the citizens, the voters, the indigenous people, all the people who live in that country. That's what a country is. They had nothing to do with it, creating World War I or World War II. In fact, when given the opportunity during World War I, at Christmas time, there were people sitting on both sides, German side, English side, and the English heard the German soldiers singing Christmas carols, and they thought, wow, that's kind of neat that they're doing that. So they started singing Christmas carols too. And before they knew it, both sides were singing. That's how close the trenches were, and they were killing each other. Just unbelievable slaughter in World War I, trench warfare. And before they knew it, they got out of their trenches and were celebrating Christmas together. And this is a well-documented fact. Well, when the leadership found out that both sides were collaborating, heads rolled. They were furious on both sides, and the criminal elements, or the traitors that actually ended the war at that moment, were severely punished, and I believe that on both sides a few people were actually shot for doing that. And they were moved around, different sectors and separated out, and they did everything they can to make sure that peace did not happen again. And peace eventually didn't happen in World War I until there was essentially no more young men to kill on both sides. So this is the leadership who refuse to take responsibility for what they do. Because why? Why do they do that? Because they want power, and new generations of vibrant young men are a danger. Nowadays, they have more sophisticated methods of killing young men than just simply feeding them into this death machine called war. They make them sick, maybe, instead of killing them outright, because they find that there's more. It's better to keep people working and then just use them up that way gradually, like the Germans did in World War II. They thought, well, why are we killing all these people? We need to work them to death, because that way we could get more out of them. We just don't. We gradually work them to death, So they put them in these concentration camps. They started by shooting people and killing them any way that was convenient, but then they thought, well, we've robbed them, we've got everything they've got, but there's still some work energy that we can get out of these people. So let's use that. And this is the kind of mindset that people have, certain people at the very top. And anyway, this is what Brexit, this is what trying to get national sovereignty is all about. It's taking your life out of the hands of someone who is very far away from you, someone who you have no ability to prevent from hurting you or robbing you or killing you. Taking that power away from them and giving that power either back to yourself or a representative that you can remove if that person becomes an issue. So let's watch the video, and then I'll make some comments about what's going on now in Europe.
Normally what happens is the UK follows American trends. I would like to think that Brexit kind of set the path and gave a bit of inspiration to Team Trump and to ordinary voters, because the message from Brexit was, if the ordinary folk go out and vote, bother to make the effort, then you can topple the establishment. We did it in the United Kingdom, you've done it here, and I have to say, listening to Trump's speech today, this is a political revolution and it's very exciting.
This is written in our constitutions, both in Europe and in America. This is who we are, this is our identity, this is something we cannot forget. Our European history has taught us to celebrate when a wall is torn down and the bridge is built. We learned from our own great but also tragic history that every human being is first and foremost a person with fundamental rights that cannot be put into question.
Well, in the past few minutes, UKIP former leader Nigel Farage has defended Donald Trump's travel restrictions and accused the EU of being anti-American.
I've no doubt that the events in the USA over the last few weeks have been a very profound shock to you. Perhaps you're right. You see, what has happened here is somebody has stood on a manifesto for election, got into office, and within 1 week said that he will hold faith with his own electorate. It is called genuine democracy. Unlike the system we have in the European Union, where the unelected commissioners like Mogherini here have the sole right to propose legislation. So I'm sure that it's a great shock to you to see that a genuinely elected Democrat is doing what he was put in to do. And it must be, I would think today in Washington. Sorry. I can't hear you, mate.
Di questo Parlamento e delle funzioni istituzionali dei commissari. Questo lo dobbiamo non solo per il rispetto istituzionale alla Commissione, ma anche alla benevolenza della commissaria vicepresidente e alto rappresentante onorevole Mogherini. La ringrazio.
Thank you.
And out of institutional respect, President, to the truth, perhaps you will understand and agree with me that within the European form of lawmaking, it is the unelected Commission that have the sole right to propose legislation. If I'm wrong in saying that, you can throw me out of this Parliament right here, right now, this afternoon.
Onorevole Farage, io la richiamo soltanto a un atteggiamento rispettoso.
I am just asking you to be a little bit more respectful, please.
Prego, può continuare.
You may continue.
Oh, I'll be respectful, all right, and perhaps you will be too, for the right of the leader of a political party that won the European elections in the United Kingdom in 2014. Now, it seems to me that actually, with all the anti-Trump rhetoric that is coming from everywhere, actually what we're hearing is the true nature of the European project, which is genuine anti-Americanism. Trump is motivated by protecting the United States of America from Islamic terrorism. whereas what has happened in this room and in governments around Europe is you have welcomed these people into your own homes. But can we please, just for a moment, look at the facts? Amongst all the hyperbole and the hysteria, all that Donald Trump has done is taken 7 countries that were identified by President Obama as posing a risk to the USA. Obama already had put in place extreme vetting. What Trump has done is for 90 days to say, let's examine that vetting and see whether it's good enough. But I want to ask you, Mr. Verhofstadt, and all the others, with your faux outrage today, where were you when Obama in 2011 banned any Iraqi from going into the country for 6 months? Why do I hear no criticism in this chamber or from the Commission of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain and others who refuse to take a single, not one, refugee or displaced person from Syria? And how can it be that on Holocaust Day, last Friday, not a single one of you criticised the 16 countries in the world that ban Israeli Jews from even going to their country on holiday? What is this hypocrisy? So perhaps what we need to do, Mr. President, and through you to the members, perhaps what we need to do is to be a little bit more constructive. All of us here say we're Democrats. Well, here's a chance to prove it. Let us invite President Trump to come here to this European Parliament. I'm sure as Democrats you'd all agree that what we need to do is to have an open dialogue with the newly elected most powerful man in the world. And if you throw that rejection back in my face, then you prove yourself to be the anti-democratic zealots that I always thought you were. Trump is motivated by protecting the United States of America from Islamic terrorism, whereas what has happened in this room and in governments around Europe is you have welcomed these people into your own homes. What we need to do is to have an open dialogue with the newly elected most powerful man in the world. And if you throw that rejection back in my face, then you prove yourself to be the anti-democratic zealots that I always thought you were.
All right, you know that guy, Brexit leader Nigel Farage, making a big speech at the European Parliament earlier today. Talk about going into, I don't know what you call it, viper's nest, however you want to call it. Anyway, Nigel, very good to have you. How was that received? Again, you were reminding them of the dangers that are out there and what's there, and some obviously liked what you said. I don't know about the others. What happened?
Oh, no, I mean, you saw the people behind me who were clapping, but believe you me, the vast majority were screaming and shouting. And there were even people in the public gallery who were shouting me down. You see, what has happened here is that with President Trump saying, look, we're going to put a 90-day, freeze on these 7 countries, incidentally, that Obama identified as being dangerous, this is being used as an excuse to attack Trump. But the real reason isn't that. The real reason is that this new American administration does not respect supranational organizations like the European Union. It believes in nation states. And these guys here, they were scared after Brexit. They're now terrified by Trump.
What is it they're terrified about, Nigel? Just what?
Well, what they're terrified of is this, that this incredible structure that has been built up here in Brussels. I mean, it's been one of the best pay jobs, one of the best pension provisions for tens of thousands of people the world has ever seen. And what they know is not just with Brexit, but in every country in Europe, the populations are saying, what on earth is this all about? Why don't we run our own countries and make our own laws? And there have been some hints coming out from the Trump administration that they would like to do trade deals and business with countries bilaterally, bypassing the bureaucrats of the European Union. So they fear that Trump effectively will freeze them out.
Is it their sense, too, that this danger doesn't exist for everybody? I mean, no one seems immune, including the members of the European community and the European Union itself, No one's immune to this threat. I mean, so what is it they have against the new president?
Oh, well, I mean, don't forget that Mr. Juncker, who runs the Commission here,
right,
and Chancellor Merkel, who is the Chancellor of Germany, both of these people said about 18 months ago, we will welcome as many people that cross the Mediterranean as possible, and all of them can settle in our countries. That has led, I'm sad to say, directly to ISIS terrorists coming into Europe, and we've seen a string of the most appalling atrocities. But they're in denial over this, and they see Trump saying, I'm going to make America safe, I'm going to be absolutely careful, I'll put in place extreme vetting to protect American citizens, and perhaps because of their own guilt and their own realization of what they've done to their own communities, they now label him as being extremist and racist for doing so. And I did my best today, Neil, to stand up and defend his actions.
Shall we hear from him directly? Shall we get him on the line and involve him in the conversation? Nigel.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So you just, your friend Guy Verhofstadt is here. You heard him, I'm sure, in the last few minutes talking about Europe. Very candid appraisal of Europe's faults, which I'm sure you would agree with, only that he wants to use it for different ends. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say to Mr. Verhofstadt is, of course, I have just helped to lead a campaign where my salary will be abolished completely, and I was the turkey that would vote for Christmas. So don't worry, Mr. Verhofstadt. Once we've left, I won't take a penny of EU salary. But I tell you what really interests me.
But you're still taking the money now, aren't you? And you're spending probably more time on LBC than you are in Brussels and Strasbourg.
Oh, no, I should be broadcasting from Brussels on Wednesday night on behalf of LBC, so I can take this show with me wherever I go. There's no problem with that.
But in terms of the European taxpayers paying your wages, you're a bit of a waste of money, aren't you?
Well, I'll tell you how it works. The more you're there, the more you cost the taxpayer, because every day an MEP is in Brussels, he or she sign a piece of paper, and they get given €300 in cash, tax-free. So the less I'm there, the less I cost the taxpayer.
So in other words, you're not spending the money that you could be spending in the pub or for having sumptuous 10-course lunches.
No, I'm missing out very badly on the wonderful lifestyle that is enjoyed by everybody in Brussels. But absolutely.
And when you are in Brussels on those rare days that you're there and you get your €300 a day, you're not spending that on big meals. You're just having a little sandwich of pret-a-porter to save money.
Actually, to be honest with you, I normally have visitors with me who I entertain and look after.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, no, I do. And what I've found over the years is that if you bring taxpayers and voters and show them the European institutions, it makes them very angry, particularly those of an older generation who were told we were joining a common market, and they literally had no idea of the sheer size and scale of this European government that has been set up. They're appalled by the waste of money. They really are.
Okay, Guy Verhofstadt, what do you say?
I have nothing to say.
You have nothing to say.
Apparently, it all the visitors were paying the meal of Nigel Farage.
So, but I mean, would you care to ask Nigel Farage whether he and Donald Trump are together trying to destroy the European Union? That seems to be the question of the day.
Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's also what I have putting in my book. That is an enormous threat, and I think it's a mistake by America, by the United States of America, to bid on the disintegration of the Union, because the best ally for the United States of America is a strong European Union, is a strong defense union by Europe, because a person can only walk on two legs, and also the American president. He needs an American leg at one hand, and I think he needs a European leg at the other hand. And so bidding, trying to disintegrate the European Union, revival of nationalism on the European continent, is, I think, the worst thing what can happen for our citizens and for the next generations. Yes.
Okay, Nigel, your response? Nigel Farage?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is causing extreme nationalism is the European project itself. I mean, if you're Greek now, it's virtually irrelevant who you vote for in general elections, because you're run by the EU. You're told what you can spend and what you can do. And that's why we've got a neo-Nazi party now thriving in Greece. And I must admit, I first went to Brussels wanting the UK to leave, but I thought if the rest of you want it, that's fine. And what I've seen the Danes reject a treaty, be made to vote again. I've seen the Irish twice reject a treaty, be made to vote again. I've seen the French and Dutch reject the Constitution and be ignored. And I would say this to Mr. Verhofstadt. He can argue for his United States of Europe, but actually it has no legitimacy because nobody in Europe has ever voted for it. And I do firmly believe that it's coming to an end, and we'll see a Europe of nation states, and we'll trade together, and we'll cooperate together, and we'll have reciprocal deals together, and we'll all get on much better as a Europe of sovereign nations. And I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed.
I feel like I'm attending a meeting of a religious sect here this morning. It's as if the global revolution of 2016, Brexit, Trump, the Italian rejection in the referendum has completely bypassed you. You can't face up to the fact that this bandwagon is going to roll across Europe in these elections in 2017. A lot of citizens now recognise this form of centralised government simply doesn't work. Whether it's the miseries inflicted upon a country like Greece by the euro, the unemployment caused by bad regulation, or the feeling that none of us are as safe in our cities because of the disastrous common asylum policy. But at the heart of it is a fundamental point. Mr. Verhofstadt this morning said the people want more Europe. They don't. The people want less Europe. And we see this again and again when people have referendums and they reject aspects of EU membership. But something more fundamental is going on out there. Yes, you can say they're lying, and I've no doubt that many of you here, when you hear what I'm about to say, will probably despise your own voters. Because just last week, Chatham House, the reputable group, published a massive survey from 10 European member states, and only 20% of people want immigration from Muslim countries to continue. Just 20% want us to keep on allowing people in from Muslim countries, which means your voters have a harder line position on this than Donald Trump or myself or frankly any party sitting in this parliament. And that is where we're going. And I simply cannot believe that you're blind to the fact that even Mrs. Merkel has now made a U-turn and wants to send people back. Even Mr. Schulz thinks that it's a good idea. The fact is, the European Union has no future at all in its current form, and I suspect you're in for as big a shock in 2017 as you were in 16.
This place is just delusional. They think that what the citizens want is a stronger, deeper, more federal European Union. In fact, one of them even said that the EU was like a symphony that would be playing grandly this time next year. And I felt like I was attending a meeting of a religious cult.
Okay, we're back. And you saw Nigel Farage really telling the people in the European Union the way it is. And I find it amusing the way the other representatives respond. Some of them clap and support him, and others are very upset with him. And you saw the guy with the sign, he's lying to you. I thought that was so childish. Draw a little handwritten sign and then hold it up with an arrow. I thought that was pathetic. But later on, in the more recent video, you didn't see that. In fact, he seemed that he was getting more respect. Although it was true that the European Union, as he said, really is just a rubber stamp. The European Parliament, not the European Union, but the European Parliament. There's the actual commission that actually proposes, makes laws. The European Union can only discuss them and then, well, that's really about it. They can't propose them, they can't veto a law. So they really have very little power. But those are the representatives who are in that room of the various member states of the European Union. And that's just, that's why it's not a democratically run European Union. It's very much a tyrannical, very small group of men who run the show. And this model of the European Union, the United States of Europe, is something that the planners at the very top of the pyramid want to basically cookie cutter around the world. They want the African Union, the American Union, the North American Union, the South American Union, the Asian Union, the Pacific, I think it's called the Pacific Union, eventually having unions, so superstates all around the world, various places, with the idea that eventually all these unions would join and they would become one United States of the world. So there would be no refuge for dissenters. There would be no country that would be an alternative. There would be no global alternative for someone who wanted to start a new type of country, a free and independent country, because everything would be under the control of the world union, the new world order, essentially, is what they term it. This is not my term or some conspiracy theorist term. The new world order is very definitely a real term. I can remember H.G. Wells wrote a book called The New World Order back in like 1940 or something. H.G. Wells, who was a futurist, who believed very strongly that nation states had to go. Now right now, we're seeing in the United States and in Europe and many other places the overlay that's being foisted upon the public by the mainstream media, that anyone who is for the nation state is a racist. Now, how that makes sense to anyone who is really a kind of a thoughtful person who analyzes what this means, I don't know. I don't get it. Because they usually say, well, you're a racist because you don't want immigration from Muslim countries. That's where it stands right now. Well, first of all, Muslim people are all different colors, so it's not a matter of race. It's actually a religion, and some people would argue that it's not just a religion, but it's also a lifestyle and an ideology. And it also drags with it a whole set of pre-Muslim customs, tribal customs, that probably go back thousands of years, much older than the Muslim religion. The Muslim religion is actually a fairly new religion. It's younger than Christianity, certainly younger than Buddhism, and most certainly much younger than Hinduism, which are most of the major religions of the world. So Muslim is fairly new, and the Muslims still have this idea that if we can just make the whole world Muslim, I'm not saying all Muslims have this, but the extreme groups within the Muslim religion believe that only a person who only if a person believes in the most strict interpretation of the Quran, only that person will go to heaven. Everyone else is an apostate, an infidel, a kafir, and is unworthy even to live, and they can be deceived, they can be lied to, they can be stole from, you can do anything you want to them because they're nothing but dogs anyway. They're on the level of dogs, and Muslims apparently don't like dogs. That seems to be their view, because they always use that word dog as if it's a bad thing. For a Western person, to call someone else a dog, I mean, I don't know if that would be a bad thing, because people love dogs. They adore dogs. At least around where I live, everybody has dogs, multiple dogs, and they're part of the family. And anyway, sometimes they're abused. They use them as a way to tell you whenever neighbors or intruders are coming. You know, they always have them in cages or staked out on cords, long chains or something. But I'm getting distracted here from what's going on in Europe. Okay, Europe is in a state of change now. This is a change that has already happened, and that is the influx of hundreds of thousands or millions of immigrants from many, many countries. And we have a huge, of course, in the United States, a huge influx of immigrants as well. So this is the whole Western Hemisphere is moving into the United States and into Europe from other countries, from the Middle East, from Central Asia, from China, from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, from Africa. And Africa is huge. You know, there are lots of countries. Africa is a continent. People sometimes forget how big Africa really is. And many of these people from all these areas want to move into Europe. And many of them cannot speak the language. Many of them cannot even write in their own language, much less in the language of the country that they're now living in. And so their skills are really limited in what they can do. They are pretty well taken care of for the most part, because most European countries have a socialistic system with the cradle-to-grave welfare state would apply to these immigrants. And so they're very well housed, they're fed, they're clothed, all their needs are met. But there's one need that's not being met, and this is something that is not being addressed by the mainstream media, and that is useful work. Now, one thing that people need, I've heard that men need useful work more than women, that women can survive better without useful work than men can. Men seem to go nutty if they do not have useful work. Literally go bonkers if they don't have something that keeps them occupied. And so, but there just simply isn't the work. And they would need to be trained to be able to do the work, even if the job was there. For many of these people from Africa, from Central Asia, they're illiterate, many of them. And of course, why are they wanting to leave their countries? Because of the global empire, which now has a policy of regime change, destabilization in these countries. So it's really not necessarily their fault, although, I mean, if they would work to fix the problems in their own country, that would be great, but maybe they're incapable of doing that. I don't know. They're just trying to survive, a lot of these people. And they're going to the place that is going to treat them the best. This is just human nature. If I have nothing and I find out that I can go to a place like Sweden or the Netherlands or France or Germany, that I will be taken care of. I'll get a check every month. I'll get a nice apartment. I'm going to try to go there. And the problem is that once the people are there, they don't have anything to do. Now the women, okay, they could take care of the children. They can cook the meals. They can take care of the house. But in this society, in the culture, men, particularly in the cultures, men don't do things like that. They don't take care of children. They don't clean houses. They don't cook meals. So if they don't have a job, what are they going to do? They have nothing to do. And so what they think about is, well, how can I get a job? I know, I'll band together with my other friends and we'll overthrow the country. That way, we can be running the country and we can create our own jobs. Or that'll definitely give us something to do. And a cause. Men love a cause. And plus, there's the idea that, well, for these young men, it's like, look at all these young women walking around. And look at and what are they doing? You know, look at the way they're dressed. They must want me because they're dressed in such a way that they obviously want someone to impregnate them, but they're not getting impregnated. What's wrong with these European men? Why are they not impregnating these women? That's what men do. That's one of the main, or maybe the main, purpose of a man, according to, you know, Central Asia, Middle East, Africa, and many, many other places in the world. That's what men do, is they impregnate women. Women are for having children. So they're not having children. Why are these women not having children? These children are a blessing from God. I was talking to a Muslim guy the other day, and he said, every child you have in the Muslim religion increases your prestige, your honor. It shows that Allah has blessed you, and they're seen as a wonderful thing. Whereas in Europe, in the United States, children are seen more as an impediment to prosperity, and also they get in the way of your career. I mean, women have careers, and they think, well, I'm not going to be taking care of children. I don't want to be raising children. I want to be a journalist, or I want to be, you know, a CEO of a company, or I want to work in a lab, or I want to be a college professor. I don't have time to take care of children. So literally in a lot of countries, and particularly in Europe, the people are simply not reproducing themselves. They're not doing it. And so the imams say, well, you guys could just take up the slack that these European men are dropping the ball. They're dropping the ball, you know, they're not pulling their weight. And you could do this, and we can fill this whole country with our people, with Muslims, and because they assume, of course, that their kids are going to be Muslims if they have kids. I guess that sort of goes without saying. It's almost like it's not a religion, but it's actually who you are. It's who you are. It's like, well, you can't just not be a Muslim. You are a Muslim. But I thought it was a religion, which means that you have a choice whether or not you're Muslim. And I'm really not sure if the way that a lot of Muslims think is that way. It's sort of like the way certain other religions think. It's not like in the Jewish religion. I talked to a Jewish girl and I asked her, are you born Jewish, or is it something that you believe in that you're Jewish? And she said, no, you're definitely born Jewish. I'm thinking, how could that be? How could someone be born Jewish? When you're born, you don't even, all you know is you're a baby and you're hungry and you want affection and your diaper needs to be changed. You have no idea and no clue what you are, that you're Jewish. And so someone else puts that on you. And if you were taken out of that context and given to a different type of family who weren't Jewish, you wouldn't be Jewish. You would have no idea that you were Jewish. I mean, this is just something that's just a construct that's made up for any religion, Christian, whatever. It's just something that's made up. And sometimes people even they change their mind and they decide to be Jewish or they decide to be Muslim. Well, anybody who can decide to be Muslim can undecide to be Muslim or Christian or Jewish or any other religion, Buddhism. Oh, I have friends who decided they wanted to be Buddhists. I know people who no longer practice the Muslim religion. One guy told me years ago, I remember him telling me, this praying 5 times a day, I just can't do it. It's too much to ask, so I've given up on it. I don't practice, I'm really not into it. So, I mean, people have a choice. And this is one thing that is absolutely basic and essential for human beings. We have a choice. I mean, people actually kill themselves. So they actually have a choice whether or not they live or not. That's, I guess, the ultimate choice right there. So we have a choice. And people protect that. And they resent it when other people try to take away their choice, their ability to choose. And, well, they say, well, yeah, but now wait a minute. Now, for security reasons, you have to give up some of that ability to choose if you want to be safe. If you want us to keep you safe from the bad people, from the boogeyman, then you're going to have to give up some of that freedom of choice. I'm sorry, you have to make a choice here. This is going to be your last choice. And if you want to be safe, you have to choose not to have a choice on certain very, very important aspects of your life, like, for instance, privacy. You're going to have to choose to not have privacy. Well, guess what? Privacy equates to freedom very closely. It's almost the same thing. Freedom and privacy are essentially the same thing. No privacy, no freedom. So this is a very important aspect of what life in 2017 on planet Earth looks like at the moment. And we see it being played out in Europe in an amazing way, and in America too. But it's fascinating to see what is happening in Europe because it reflects what's happening in the United States. Right now, Marine Le Pen is poised to gain a lot of power in France. There's going to be an election very soon. And what I'm hearing is that she will probably not end up being president of France because there are 4 different candidates running, so this splits the vote, and it's very difficult for one particular candidate to get 50% or over 50%. And that's what's required to actually outright take control and become president. So in France, as in many other European countries, there are lots of different parties, lots of different candidates running, and they have to, so the winners have to make a coalition in order to get power, to actually put their man or woman in the presidency. And Marine Le Pen is very nationalistic and saying we have to stop immigration. Put a hold on it, immigration. I guess France has the most immigrants of any country. 20% are now immigrants. And these people are kind of ghettoized. They have their own culture. They're holding on to their culture. They don't want to mix in. I think some of them do, but some of them don't. They like their culture, and they want all of France to be their culture because they feel hemmed in by French culture. So they feel like the French should accommodate them, and they want to get control. And the French, they say, no, we like French culture. And the two cultures are so different. Can you imagine Muslim culture trying to mix in with French culture, which is French culture, is Brigitte Bardot, as opposed to Muslim culture, which is like, I don't know, Mother Teresa or something. Well, not Mother Teresa, but somebody a nun. Kind of the Muslims, women remind me of nuns, just the way they dress. So you have this cover up and hide everything to be wild and run around in bikinis with your hair flowing in the wind. This is French culture. French culture is eat all these weird things like snails and all this other stuff. And the Muslims is like, well, you can't eat that. You can't eat that. You can't do this. You can't do that. And the funny thing is that French culture and all of European culture used to be very, very much closer to Muslim culture. I was just watching a movie. I'm reading a book, and I saw the movie Tess of the D'Urbervilles, written in the 1880s in England. And I was thinking, you know, this is really very similar to the way that culture is now. I mean, for a woman to have sex outside of marriage in England in 1880, that was an unbelievable scandal for the family. And literally, the woman's life is ruined. She's scorned. She is exiled. Now, her family took her in but, after she left her boyfriend, and she had a child by this man out of wedlock, but yet, nevertheless, there was dishonor that the family felt. And particularly because her family, even though they were very poor, had pretensions to gentility because they found out that they were descended from a very wealthy, powerful family that has since pretty much disintegrated and no longer has any land, any money, any power, any prestige. And they felt like, well, we do have some of that prestige because, well, we didn't even know we were part of that family, but now we know we're part of that amazing, ancient, powerful family. And so therefore, this gives us kind of an ego trip about it. And so they made it more difficult for her because of those circumstances. So this is very old-fashioned by view of things. This is from well over 100 years ago. Whereas in France and other countries now, with the culture that is entering there, they're still very family-oriented, very, very concerned about family honor, very concerned that any woman, now men, it doesn't seem to matter. For men, those strictures are not on the men. Men can do whatever they want. They don't have to wear special clothing. They can get away with a lot more than women can. But women are very closely watched. And you've heard of the honor killings that happen because a woman dishonored the family, where her brother or uncle or her father will literally kill that woman if she dishonors the family in some way. And that's acceptable in that society, in that culture. And I'm not sure if that really is part of the Muslim if that's Muslim or if that's not some kind of tribal thing from the pre-Muslim days. I think it may be a little bit of both. But clearly, in order to blend in with French society, those people, the immigrants, need to adapt the French ways. Now, and some of them are. And they're removing the head scarf. They're allowing their women to move freely, to have relationships with men outside of marriage, which is the French way. Because remember, society keeps changing. And it's going to continue to change. A lot of the people who move to the United States, you become Americanized. You start thinking like Americans. And Americans have this view that, you know, America is fantastic. And probably most countries, people of most countries think this. People in France believe that the French are the most fabulous people on earth. The greatest country. People in Germany, the same. People in Denmark, the same. Sweden, the same. Great Britain, the same. America is no different. So when people come here and gradually they think, you know, this is wonderful. And they probably wouldn't have even come here unless they thought that this was a great place to be. And I think oftentimes immigrants, at least in this country, like this country more than the people who've lived here for a while, because they have this idealistic view that, oh, this is the land of opportunity, the American dream, I want a piece of the American dream, if I just work hard I can make it. And then they become disappointed because it doesn't work out that way. America is not the utopia that they thought it was, that still has, it's just another country like so many other countries with its good points and bad points. So that's about it for today. Have a great evening and sleep well.